Okay, so we'll get started. I know our acting city manager has a few words, and then I will go ahead and present with the proposed budget for 25-26.
Thank you, Maria Lisa. My name is Mylan Marakich. I'm the acting city manager for the city of West Covina, and I took over just over 12 days ago. So with that, I inherited a bunch of things that were not done, needed to be caught up. One of them was the budget workshops that the community had been promised. Well, I take over and none were scheduled. So we immediately scheduled 3 budget workshop meetings. This is the second one. And what I stressed at the first one was, regardless of how things were done in the past, I really want you to ask questions, voice your concerns, and we will be responsive to your concerns, get you an answer back, get you the information you need. In each meeting moving forward, from last one to this one to the next one, we'll start capturing and answering your questions from the previous meeting. Okay? So Maria Luisa, I will let you do the budget presentation, and they will answer questions from there.
Okay. Thank you. I'd like to also acknowledge we have 2 council members here, Rosario Diaz and Ali Cantos. And also we have city staff here to support Assistant City Manager Roxanne Lerma, City Clerk Lisa Sherrick, and we also have an audit committee member here, Jim Grivich. So thank you. And then we also have Susie in the back. I'm sorry, I saw you come in after. So thank you. I'm going to go over the proposed budget for 25-26, which is different from the financial forecast that was presented last month. That was more for a 5-year. Now, this 1 year, there's different circumstances and different changes that were made after the review of the financial forecast. So this is what I'm going to go over. And tomorrow, I'm going to have the presentation available also on the website. So this would be available. There's only one other thing that I added from the last presentation, but I mean, it was just Thursday, so it's like 1 business working day. So there's only one thing with special events. Everything else is the same, but we're looking to hear from you for the input. Okay, so we'll go over that. So the summary of the budget process. This year's budget process began last December with a budget survey, and we'll go over the budget results later in this presentation. But as you can see here, we have December through May, we had the budget survey available online. Then we had the long-range financial forecast, which was presented. However, it will have to be filed and approved by council at a later time, July, hopefully before the GFOA award, and we have to submit for the award 90 days after year end, after we adopt the budget. Then I'm going with the proposed budget presentation tomorrow to council, and that's going to be a different presentation, but with the same numbers, it's just less detail. Then we have the budget adoption appropriations limit. So the adoption is actually going June 17th, and then we'll need an adopted budget so that we can have expenditures to spend and payroll process, AP, everything that there is for the next fiscal year by July 1st, which is our fiscal year beginning. Okay. Here we have the citywide summary. Revenues for all funds combined is over $144.2 million, and property tax even citywide remains the largest revenue source, followed by sales tax. Total expenditures excluding transfers for all budgeted funds are estimated to be $156 million, it's 0.1 million. Overall, the citywide budget is structurally balanced as recurring revenues exceed the recurring expenditures, and essentially the city is investing applicable fund balances that have been accumulated in special revenue funds, because this is citywide, into the city's assets. Many funds make up the total budgeted amount, with the largest being the general fund. So this is now I'm talking about funds, not just revenue sources. So this would be the general fund being the largest, and that's $82 million, or 67% of the city's budget. But here you can see where the revenue sources are coming from, and the expenditures on the right, salaries and benefits being 45% of the total budget, but this also includes the capital improvement plan. This is the general fund summary that we came to, and to get a balanced budget for the next fiscal year. The proposed budget has been structurally balanced with a net change in fund balance estimated to be about 700. So as you can see here in fiscal year 22-23, there was a deficit of about 3 million. Then in 23-24, and this is actuals, I'm not budget. So 23-24, there was a slight excess of 830,000. Now, of course, if contracts weren't spent, it still rolls over for the budget. We adopted a budget for 24-25, which is the last year, and we had a slight surplus of $1,300. And so, but based on the second quarter report, there is a projected deficit of 1.1 million. And so what I'm proposing now is a balanced budget for the next fiscal year. We are having, I kind of illustrated there in the bottom, or like not illustrated, but listed the bottom, the ending fund balance. And so at the end, we end up still 20.7 million, and really the reserve requirement is 17.3. However, it has to be unassigned fund balance. So even though this is the ending fund balance, about 3 million is assigned, and it's non-spendable, land held for resale. So really you have to deduct that out, and then we would still be within the reserve requirement. But then, according to our fund balance, depending on where we're at actually, then we may not have to transfer out at the end of the year, but that's not a statement I'm making, that's what the fund balance policy is, not that that will happen. So let's go into the general fund, since that is the largest of expenditures for the city, and also just like what is spent for most employees and departments. So this chart illustrates the revenue sources. Property tax and sales tax are the largest, and they're about, what is that, like 78%, of course, with other taxes as well. So this is what it's a little different. I actually put the numbers here for 23-24, and then what, like 23-24 is what I have actual right now. And then I have original budget. It pretty much stayed the same for 24-25. Then what we're estimating over, and what I've changed for this next fiscal year. So this is a little bit more detail, and it goes and it agrees with what we have as a proposed budget. So property tax is going up slightly, 3.1, and that's been pretty consistent year by year. Confident with that. Sales tax, I have an increase of 11.2 in comparison to the budget of last year. However, if you see there, our 23-24 actuals were 26.2, which is like about a little less than 3 million, more than the original budget that was adopted before we even knew what the actuals would be for 23-24, because remember, we do have to adopt the budget in advance of before doing the year end. So that already, right there, we had 26.2. So now with our consultants, they've kind of advised us that it will pretty much stay leveled. Of course, we don't know with the climax, but with the climate of financials right now, but we've been asserted that it pretty much will stay leveled. I have an increase of about 2%, but that's only to the actuals. But I do have a large increase if you're comparing it to the budget, and so that's what has allowed a little bit more to have an increase with what the expenditures are also increasing by. A slight decrease in other taxes, charges for services. I do, since in the last council meeting, there was discussion about the Proposition A exchange. I've explicitly included in here we are proposing to exchange 3.5 million of Prop A funds in exchange for 2.6 million in general fund monies. And other general revenues are on here as well, so we've included fines and building permits that we anticipate to also go up. Changes in the general fund balance, we saw fund balance spike to 25 million in fiscal year 2021, as it was a lot more conservative, and 24 million in 21-22, but is estimated to level back down to 21 million in the current year and proposed budget. So, we recently, well, like I said, we have the 18% reserve requirement now. Before, it used to be 17%, but with the state audit now, part of our plan is it's been adjusted for our fund balance policy to stay at 18% of reserves. So here I have the general fund expenditures. While revenue has increased, expenditures have increased at a higher rate. Well, for this year, there were some accommodations that were changed after. But general fund expenditures for the fiscal year 25-26 are projected to be over 82 million, and this is a 6.3 million increase from the current year's original budget. Most general fund expenditures go towards salaries, benefits, as you can see, it's about 76% there. And that's on the left. And over the past couple of years, the city has executed memorandums of understandings, I would just say MOUs, with all of its bargaining groups, and we're still in the process, and some of them have expired, and so we are currently in negotiations. On the right, you'll see PD being 45%, fire 32%, and this is part of their whole budget. I'm not just talking about salaries, it's materials and services and everything that it accumulates for, or it sums to for the general fund expenditures. Comparison of the general fund expenditures here, I've also detailed out more numbers. Looking into that, so you see I have a 6.3 increase. A lot of general fund, I'm sorry, not general, well, this is general fund, but general government here includes city manager's office, the city clerk, finance, and HR. And although there's a savings realized this year in the city clerk, since this is a non-election year, the savings is really offset with an inclusion of an HR director, which is needed for that department. It's reprogrammed from a technician, and it's largely offset with expenditures based on the unfunded accrued liability and workers' comp distributions as well. And you'll see this really, each department, it's not going up because they're asking for more, it's really, or like materials and services, although costs have gone up, they're trying to accommodate and, just really work within their means. But it's been because of the salaries, workers' comp, unfunded accrued liability. A lot you see there for fire and PD, 2.2 million, 3 million. And that's because that alone, even though the unfunded accrued liability is for the whole city and there's an increase like up to 3 million, but then 1.7 alone is for the sworn. So that's fire and safety that are carrying all that increase. And then of course, workers' comp for those departments as well. Community services is also increased by 14%, and that is due to including special events that's trending with actuals. Full-time employees by department within the general fund. We have here PD is 144, so that's in line with, their 45% of the budget. Then there's fire 76, finance 14, public works is 9 here, but most of their staff is actually allocated to different special funds and local return funds that can be used for the type of work that they do. So that's a big alleviation on the general fund. There's community services, administration as well, and public safety, and so forth. Pension costs, I've included here. Well, I know they're all like green, but as you can see there, the one on the bottom is really what the unfunded accrued liability is, and those are the numbers that we received from CalPERS. So that's really what's driving the huge increase, because the darker green in the middle, that's really the normal cost, and that's set up on a percentage based on the salaries. So that just increases, yes, it increases slightly for our employer costs as well, but not as big of an amount as our unfunded accrued liability, which is what's really increasing a lot. Here, just to familiarize you with also the general fund workers' comp funding, this year, from the general fund based on salaries, we've allocated 3.61 distributed to each bargaining group based on the actuarial that was provided based on like the risk that was there. So this is what was allocated from each salary into this separate fund. So I'm talking into the internal service fund, which is where we where we pay out the workers' comp, the general liability too. I don't want to just say, I kept on saying workers' comp, but it's both, workers' comp, general liability. Citywide, the funding for the fiscal year increased 1.4, but 1.2 is just in the general fund for these increases in workers' comp funding. I also wanted to note, and I know I had mentioned this before in a council meeting, so this is the cost, but of course there's a liability. So the liability that's funded in this internal service fund, that's in fiscal year 2022, that liability was 12.7 million. In 2023, it was 20.5. And now, as of the last financial that was audited, it was 24.5. So this is where I'm saying where the liability is what doubled. This is what we've assigned, and based on the projected losses that we've gotten from the actuarial. However, sometimes they can peak and dip, but essentially the liability, this is what to fund the liability, as there's some new cases sometimes coming on as well. This is the open liability claims as of the last actuarial, and this is based on the number of claims, not the amount that was paid. Wanted to make that clear. So these are the cases open. And the largest here, vehicle accident, there's slip and trips, also at 16%, employment termination, falling tree limb, and pothole damages. So these are like the liability claims for the city at that time. Uh-oh. I don't know what happened. Did I click too hard? Okay. I just have a couple more slides, promise, and then.
Are you charging it? Oh, it's like your computer.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Oh, where would I charge?
It's going to be, there's going to be a power strip.
Okay. Should have charged that. Okay. I think I'll just go in. Okay. I'll just summarize as we go. Okay. So we had a loss cap program that evaluated where our risks are and what to do. And so out of that, there were 63 action items that were identified. And from there, we are reviewing this monthly. We've addressed, I don't know, like 90% or like over 50. And so we're in progress of 13. However, we're reviewing that with our risk manager, and we will also be reviewing that with our new HR director. So, sorry, I'm just gonna, I think I can save this. Next, I know a hot topic is going to be our general fund overtime, so I'll have that illustrated here as well. What I've included in overtime is, oh, there we go, just straight into it. You can see that, okay, yeah. Okay, what I've taken out, just so that it's like comparing the same thing for the last 4 years, or what the last 2 years and then what I'm proposing, is just overtime, not for like what's embedded like FLSA overtime, what's already created within the bargaining groups, and it's not reimbursable overtime. So this is just true overtime that is controlled or like operationally. I've leveled it. I feel like it's been consistent within the 6.6 million, and that's what it was actuals and in the current budget. Okay, so as I said in the beginning, we'll go over the budget survey and the results. And this was made available January through May, and we had a total of 28 people that responded. This was as of last week, didn't check today, but There were 28 responses, and 86 of which were residents, and they were asked their opinion across 10 different service categories. And the importance that they identified was infrastructure, PD, and fire. But however, things that need improvement were streets, sidewalks, economic development, and affordable housing. So these were the results of the survey. What I'm proposing for the next fiscal year's budget is I'm not adding any new positions or any FTE count to the general fund. If anything, things would be reprogrammed, but there's no addition. Recreation and community service programs, including the Sportsplex operations, have been included and more to actuals. And in the last budget workshop, there was discussion about can we get more detail on the special events. So I do have one more slide that was included, and that's the only difference from our last budget workshop. So we've included special events and tree trimming and landscaping maintenance in the budget. So these are non-salary expenditures, and I've only included the amounts for this year. However, I know there was some identification that we want to compare this into the prior years, so we will work on having that information. For fiscal year 25, this is the list. Yes, there's other events and other miscellaneous, but these are the list of events that we've incurred to date. And the original budget was 210, and of course this does not include salaries, so this is non-salary expenditures. And what I'm proposing now is like a proposed budget of 466. Other considerations here, Sportsplex, these operations continue to be subsidized by the general fund in the next fiscal year. Staff is evaluating opportunities for the complex to be self-sustaining and increase the local sales tax. Health department, there are no new revenue and expenditures for the health department that I've included in my budget. And there aren't any expenditures also for the chamber. For capital projects, this is the list of proposed capital projects for the next fiscal year, some of them being fully funded here, and it amounts to about 12.7 million, all from different types of funding. Most of the funding is actually from local returns, Measure W, and different pots of money for the capital improvement, not necessarily from our capital improvement fund that is mostly funded from general fund. That we have kind of most of it coming from our SB1, our gas tax, Measure R, public arts, and so forth. And these are the type of expenditures for each capital improvement project, like the types that they are. So most of it does go to streets, traffic, general, this may be buildings, and sewer facilities, and there's a lot of projects underway. We propose an additional 12 million in the next fiscal year. And that's it. I'll hear if you have any questions with this next budget. Yes. Oh, well, is there another mic, perhaps? Okay. Is there another one? I don't believe so. Okay.
I'm going to go to Jerry first, Mr. Robinson, and then we will, okay, Mr. Robinson.
West Covina has been audited twice recently, and the financial integrity, council members don't like to talk about this subject, but the financial integrity of the city and the city budget is, we're down among the 10 or 12 bottom of cities in California. I mean, our budget integrity does not stand up well compared to other California cities, including the cities of Long Beach and Pasadena. There's no grassroots support in West Covina for the concept of a health department. It's just off the beaten trail idea of one or two eccentric councilmen. And I propose that any of the expenditures in the last 5 years on West Covina Health Department was a waste of money. That category of our budget should be zero. But for a couple of eccentric councilmen, it would be zero. There's no grassroots support, I believe, in West Covina for a county health department. Municipal government is complicated enough, and we're not even as healthy as Pasadena and Long Beach, which are the only cities in California that have a health department. It's my information, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's mainly handled by the 58 counties. So the point I'm trying to make is we could save a lot of money, and the pension and the people we'd have to have a credible health department, we'd have to hire credible people to operate it, and municipal government is complicated enough, and there's just no grassroots demand in the city. I mean, you could have a referendum, but I can predict the result would be a big no citywide. But just putting it on the ballot costs a lot of money, so forget it. Anyway, I'd just like to speak for discontinuing that part of the budget. I mean, if the council succeeds in turning West Covina into a parking ticket paradise, even that revenue won't help fund a city health department. So I'd like to give the mic to anybody else that would like to continue on that
Can I
side.
comment on that? Or do you just listen?
I mean, some response to the health department, I don't have anything new, no new health department expenditures, just what has already been approved by ARPA funding.
Well, what's the number been for the last 5 years? How much have we already spent?
We had a presentation on it, but. Okay. Go ahead, Philip.
My back, in my work career, I did do college budgeting, so I have some familiarity with budgeting. One of the things the city does, many things the city does differently than I'm familiar with. Would you address the budget amendment process and how the council can keep from overdrafting the budget with the amendment? Your process is much different than I'm familiar with. Does I say that?
You want to, what our budget amendment process is?
During the year, there's sometimes a budget amendment.
Yeah. Yes.
And it can become controversial amongst residents of what's going on. And does it cause an overdraft if the council just signs off on it? How do you prevent them from overdrafting anything from the budget that gets adopted?
That was one of our things also in the state audit. So we have a fiscal impact with every single agenda. And on there that is reported if general fund will go into a deficit, depending on what the ask may be. And so if an amendment is to be approved, it has to be a resolution. So, I mean, it's made aware on there.
So on I'm assuming you're talking about the staff report?
Yes, that's everything that goes to council and gets
So
approved.
let's say this is going to deficit spend or overdraft, and the council members, in theory, read this and would not necessarily just approve it, I would hope, as a resident. Yes? Or do they automatically just approve these things?
No, I mean, there's sometimes discussion on the staff report, and there could be some things that don't get approved. but depending on what the urgency may be or what it is, then yes,
Because you're starting off with a budget that's structurally balanced, and then as it goes through the year, it can become unbalanced, my words.
Yeah.
I would think. Okay. So
Well,
we have to
assumptions
rely on the
change.
council.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
We should, as a resident, we should rely on holding the council members responsible for the expenses.
Well, finance makes recommendations. I mean, there may be some things, assumptions that didn't come through. Typically, you see, like in sales tax, for example, it was conservative, so it was good. And so whatever ask there may have been, then it was good that sales tax came in higher. However, you know, for this year, I didn't have the luxury. I try to be as realistic just because expenditures were going up higher. So there's some recommendations on there. However, also understanding that operationally, departments, there are some asks or requests that come through. And so this is what's being presented to council for consideration. However, yes, with eyes wide open, because there's always a fiscal impact of what it was. However, we really do try to include everything that we feel will be an impact. And so sometimes we already kind of knew about that, and the fiscal impact will say this was already included in the budget. However, sometimes it's not.
I have 3 questions. First one, what exactly are type A bonds? Second question, how much of the budget revenue is predicated on parking tickets? And my third question is, one of our biggest problems in our budget is police and fire overtime. Are we doing anything to help eliminate or severely diminish it?
What was the first question?
What type bonds was the first part of your question was what type bonds?
Type A bonds. What exactly are type A bonds?
Type A bonds.
Oh, type A bonds, okay. Okay, so I think you're referring to like the tax allocation bonds that we have, and like if it's type,
We sell for pennies on the dollar. I just want everybody to know what they are.
oh, Proposition A.
Proposition A, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, yes. Different from debt service then. So Proposition A funds, they're essentially funds that we are getting, local measure funds that we're getting, and they are to be used for transportation purposes, just for specific guidelines that we have for Proposition A funds. And so those are the funds that I discussed in our exchange, that we get about 3 million. And right now we have available, I guess, funds of about 18 million. And with that, we have certain projects that we're using for that fund, but however, we have a time limit. And so we have available about, we exchange about the Proposition A funds that are on there, that we receive. And so we try and get a good rate. We feel it's a good rate. We've already went back to our contact also and tried to request an increase in that rate, but 75% seems to be the going rate, I'd say. Do you want to talk about the parking tickets?
revenue. Your question on the parking ticket revenue, you're asking how much is projected as far as parking ticket revenue? Well, right now, we're not writing parking tickets for street sweeping or anything, as the program hasn't been rolled out completely. I believe, did you have 200,000 for this year's end, where typically it's higher,
Yeah, it's,
because we had stopped writing any street sweeping tickets while we're rolling out the new program. So as far as the projection is, what you're planning as revenue for next year for fines, forfeitures, those type of things, the dollar amount roughly for that.
okay. So this is based, obviously, we don't have anything right now, but we are funding, there was a staff report also came forward, and we're funding some positions out of there, and it would go into Measure M and also our general fund. It is about $500,000 is what is there. Oh, police and fire overtime, yeah, a hot topic. We have constant discussions, we have discussions with every pay period, with police and fire, letting them know what this overtime is. I don't wanna misspeak for them, but departments may be short-staffed in some areas, there's training going on, so even if you are fully staffed, what I've been told from these operations, they have to go to mandatory training, and so overtime is imposed in that sense. It has improved, I would say, in the last few years, and especially now because I feel like the previous finance director actually included what the actuals were. And so instead of always signaling, hey, we're always gonna go up, it's always going over budget, it's like, this is what it's been at now. So what measures have been taken by the chiefs? I think they're monitoring it, that's what they're doing, we're letting them know. It's not something that they want to impose for workers, obviously a work-life balance. I don't know if there's anything else. Yeah.
Only thing I can tell you about the police and fire, as fast as we hire people or get them through the process of onboarding them, we do have retirements, we have people lateraling. So while we're trying to get ahead, it seems like we're chasing our tail right now just to stay caught up. As people retire, leave, it takes a while to onboard police officers and fires. It's about a year process for a police officer. So if we start the process today, it'll be about a year before they're fully sworn and available to come out in the field with us. And in that time, we'll have people that are putting in the retirement papers or maybe lateraling to another department. So the city, the chiefs are well aware of that, and they're actively up their recruitment strategies, including visiting the local academies, local and far, also attending military bases, those type of things, to increase their recruitment efforts and get the word out that we want to have additional people joining the West Covina family. So they're doing what they can. Again, the nature of this business has changed quite a bit. What was one of the most attractive professions to get into, a lot of people that were planning on getting into the law enforcement field are saying, you know what, I'm watching the media, I'm watching everything going on, maybe it's not for me. A lot of the qualified immunity that people enjoyed before is being pulled back. So the attractiveness of the position may not be there as much as some other fields that people are going into. But I can tell you both chiefs are working hard to get their spots filled. No one wants to have their staff forced to work overtime because we're short bodies. But unfortunately, in times of need, this incidents of this past weekend, things happen and people are forced to work a lot longer and a lot harder than they had planned to. But the city is addressing that.
Well, the problem with the overtime is also a future problem too, because it also goes into pensions.
Overtime isn't PERSable. Yeah. Overtime isn't PERSable, so that's not they do get an extra check, but yeah, overtime wouldn't go into their pensionable, what they will receive after retirement. So there's few things that don't count towards it, but that being one of them. The benefits aren't part of it too, like the monthly stipend, like that, those type of things, the auto lights, those things are not retirement or PERSable.
Thank you. I'm not gonna stand, but I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank Councilman Ollie Campus for listening to the people by going to all the meetings and understanding the people's needs and complaints. Ollie, if you could please stand so everybody can give you a hand, because you've done a super job. My number one complaint is, why don't we stop spending money on the health department that nobody wants, and we really are paying for it on our taxes that are presented by the county. and it will not change. According to the Mayor Wu, the local retirement home that had an outbreak of COVID that took 2 lives of 2 people because the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health did not show up in time. If Mayor Wu would have used his head instead of his mouth, he would have known that the Bridge Creek Holiday Retirement Community was unlicensed, and therefore they were not eligible for the first vaccine offered to the sites granted the highest priorities by the state. We could save a lot of money, and we still can. So I think that, like you say, this is a big mistake on Mr. Wu's project. Number 2, the street sweeping. Did we have to do the whole city? If there was a problem with dirty streets, then take action on it. Mayor Wu wants the city to get clean streets, sweeping every week instead of twice a month, costing us $50,000 a month more for the street sweeping. Plus now we have code enforcement. Last heard, we had at least 14 part-time and full-time that have to be paid, and they need money. But according to the Mayor Wu, the city does not need the money, and tickets run around $65 plus. Now where do we park? Shadow Oak, Nogales, Shakespeare are no parking. I know they don't want to use water, and the dirt flies up in the air in the street and comes down the same place it was. The city manager was in charge of code enforcement, and if this is an example of the work that he is in charge of, does not qualify him for the city manager. No experience, no degree. Now we have the least competent on council ever. I have also noticed that we had an assistant to the city manager. Does that still hold? So why don't we get rid of why don't we hire one qualified city manager instead of paying 2 like we have been? I want to thank Councilman Ollie Cantus again for staying on top of the flashing stop signs on Shadow Oak Drive. They were finally installed last week. It was approved by the council more than a year and a half ago. And I think that there should be something done about the street sweeping, because all we're doing is, pardon my French, but pissing people off.
Thank you. Let's start with the street sweeping. That was an initiative the council passed, and my job was to help implement parts of it. We have engineering, we have public works, we have outside contractor for the installation of signs, and then my role as public safety director was to have staff available to issue citations, follow the sweeper when the program starts running. Currently, those people have not been hired because the program is not active yet. That's the next phase, is getting the staff for the issuing of some warning notices, those type things. But once the program's fully implemented, the first phase of the installation of signs is complete through our engineering and public works department. In the public safety code enforcement, used to be called, currently staffed right now, we have 1 full-time manager, 3 full-time officers with 1 position vacant, and then we currently have right now 10 part-time officers. Some of them work 1 day a week, some a couple. We have some that work 4 days a week. But with the budget for public safety code enforcement is, with the adoption of the budget, the department is allocated a certain amount of hours in part-time salaries that can be used amongst, whether you hire 10 people to work 1,000 hours, or you hire 20 people to work 500 hours, you can't go over the threshold of 10,156 hours in a fiscal year. So it fluctuates. We hire a lot of part-timers, they stay for a little while, they move on. Sometimes it's like an amoeba, it fluctuates, and we have more, and then it shrinks back down. In the last 3 years, I can tell you, we've had 24 part-time officers that have worked for us for 6 months, a year, and then moved on to other cities, other professions in a full-time capacity. So in a way, it's kind of become a training ground for other cities in the San Gabriel Valley and other agencies. So that's why sometimes you see more, sometimes less. But again, whether it's 10 people or 25 people, the department never goes over the allotted hours approved through the budget. The ticket price, you're correct. On the section 4 posted sign restrictions, the city is $65. That goes for everything from permit parking to any type of restricted parking, time limit parking, and also street sweeping. It's all captured under the same municipal code section, so it is $65. On the street sweeper, I know there's been questions, concerns from the community about the new sweepers that are driving around the city, and maybe they're not pushing out enough water for the dust. And I recognize that because we went out there and we actually watched the sweepers. So I circled back with the Nationwide, which is our street sweeping contract, and met with their staff. And the water flow on the sweepers is regulated by AQMD. So what's happening is, compared to the old sweepers that had like a larger spray of water, it left like a snail track, a little more pronounced when the sweeper is running. The newer sweepers that are AQMD certified are more efficient, and there's more water in the hopper once it's collected than the initial spray when it's swept. So that's why you don't see as a pronounced water trail as the older sweepers are. I hope that answered your question. Did I miss any part of that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations on your promotion.
Yes, sir.
5 years ago, there was a $204 million bond loan taken out. So now, what does that cost each year to the residents? What's that bill? You have that information.
Just real quick, so being with the city for 6 years and through a lot of phone calls and dealing with residents, I know who you are. I don't think I've ever met you in person, but I recognize your voice, but I'll let Maria Luisa answer that question. Thank you, sir. You've been very helpful over the years every time I had a question, and your input's been very valuable over the years.
So you are referring to the 2020 pension obligation bonds. And so this was what was adopted, but it pretty much, I mean, it's around same. So it's our debt service payment, including principal and interest, is about 11 million.
I'm sorry, how much?
11 million.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, it's Jim Burbidge. Couple of specific things that were brought up by previous speakers. One person spoke about overtime. I believe it was 3 years ago, we were promised by the then city manager that during collective bargaining negotiations, they would negotiate a reduction in overtime. When negotiations were over with, the reduction was a tiny amount, less than $100,000. And if you're going to have a significant reduction in overtime, the most effective channel is collective bargaining, because they have certain practices that they've been doing for years, basically replacement for absence. And the biggest category of that most folks would consider problematic is significant industrial accident absences, and then all of that staffed with overtime. And most people consider that kind of a ethics issue. And there's a real incentive for somebody to work overtime. You use the word forced overtime. Most of the firemen live off of this money. It's not forced. Anyway, that's the comment about overtime. The other comment had to do with one of the people brought up the fact that during the year, the council takes a series of actions to increase the deficit. They are asked to spend money on X or Y, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter. It does say on the staff report and in the document that it will result in a reduction of the reserve. But I think much better language to communicate with the public and the council, because it also creates a deficit. When you spend money that wasn't budgeted to begin with, and you take it out of the reserves in the middle of the year, it creates a deficit. And I've never seen that kind of language in a staff report. And I would highly recommend that that be the language for any future budget adjustments that take money out of the reserves. And there, just in terms of budgeting, there is a need for the original budget to be what I refer to as an honest budget. You know, what is actually believed to be the expected revenue and the expected expenditures. And since every single year, the city adopts a balanced budget and ends up with a deficit, I believe the pattern and practice of the city is to have a dishonest budget. And I really, really strongly recommend that they change that practice.
Thanks for your input. It's been noted.
I didn't mention that I'm also not a fan of the street sweeping. I think the system that we're now implementing, first of all, we couldn't afford it. I think the previous system was they swept the streets 6 times a year, every 2 months. And I don't know why we're still doing that. On my street, they spent a lot of money to embed signs that say no parking for 4 hours on, I think it's Tuesday or something. But they put signs all over the city like that. It wasn't free. I mean, embedding all those ugly signs, it wasn't a free project. It cost money. And we weren't a parking ticket paradise in those days. And I'm wondering, last time I spoke to the council was, I don't know, 3-4 months ago. And I was talking about the California Environmental Quality Act. And maybe we got a threat from Sacramento. Well, diktats from Sacramento can be ignored. Just take the state of California to court if they're telling you to do the wrong thing. Just fight them. But I don't know the reasoning that the council had to spend a lot of money to try to start a parking ticket program and embed signs all over the city that we didn't need, and we didn't have the money to fund. Anyway, I think things are upside down, and I wanted to make that comment. I don't know why it was triggered, and we should go back to the old system of street sweeping. I guess mine is a counterpoint. Somebody said Tony wants street sweeping twice a week. I think that's absurd. But I like street sweeping 6 times a year. So there you go.
Do we have any more speakers?
Why? My question is why?
Just a quick question. Would you just explain or define what the unfunded accrued liability is and how that occurs? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll try my best. So it's the UAL, unfunded accrued liability. It's a liability that is presented and stated, reported from CalPERS, and it's per agency. So every agency based on the amount of retirees. Well, the general assumptions are for, of course, investment takes a big role into what they're investing in for CalPERS, but based on retirees, what is expected of the retirees based on the retirement formula. It's an actuarial report with, I mean, it's like a 100-page report with, and it has various assumptions, but it's the liability that is present now, and in our financials, it gets now an NPL, which is net pension liability. The unfunded accrued liability is like in general, like retiree, but then we have the net pension liability, which we have in our financials that is really reported. And the unfunded accrued liability is like a year in advance, but it projects for the 20 years. And it's what our city has and what is projecting for retirees, and even those ones that are working that are like classic, depending on their tiers. And tiers, I mean, their retirement formula, because there's different retirement formulas as well. The new ones after 2013 and before 2013. But not to complicate it, it's just what we're expected and what is being drawn down by retirees and what is expected to be paid out from this.
So when the city took out the least revenue bonds, because they didn't do pension obligation bonds, residents would have gotten the vote on pension obligation bonds. They took out least revenue bonds and they got a better rate. Now we have the liabilities from all these pensions. I'm a pensioner, but I'm talking about myself. The city can't really do anything about the pensions. The costs are back. They're coming. The day after the bill got paid, it just started up again with the pension obligation, so to speak.
That's correct.
Okay. And you can't do anything about it. The city can't really.
No, it's
Right.
like unfunded accrued liability. I mean, yes, there's things to like assess our risk and try to mitigate that, right? But when it comes to the unfunded accrued liability, I will say as a finance professional, even though I wasn't here for that time, I do think it was a good, for the lease revenue bonds, it's locking in a good rate. But yes, the unfunded accrued liability went away for a couple years, but now it is back based on the actual rates because I mean, it's a good retirement formula that we still have, and based on the assumptions and the investment returns that there are now, it has increased. I don't see it decreasing like for CalPERS. I mean, not anytime soon. It will decrease, it'll eventually, but I mean, just not for the next years. The financial forecast that we have, like 5-10 years, it's not going to decrease. It's increasing. You, okay.
Mr. Robinson, I owe you an answer. I didn't get a chance to respond. So on the history of the street sweeping program, I don't know the complete history. I just know it was delegated to me in my role, and there's other departments involved, and then everything did go through the council. Again, I don't know the whole history. Again, I just speak from what I know. So the initial plan was to install the signs throughout the city, and that's still a work in process. It's not complete. So once the signs started to be installed, we soon recognized, and when I say soon, I'm going to say previous city manager and staff recognized, and again, it was delegated to me, that some streets had too many signs, some streets did not have enough, and others just didn't make sense. You were sinking a pole in an area that didn't make sense. So city manager had asked that we start reviewing the concerns of the community on a case-by-case, but to capture and document all of them. So what I did was, on our app, the report and issue app for the city of West Covina, I put it on there that residents could report street sweeping concerns, whether it be, signs faded, old, in the wrong location, those type things. So in the initial month or two, we've probably captured and are addressing about 800 concerns in different areas. A lot of them involve old street sweeping signs that maybe said Mondays, a certain hour, and now they're a different day or different hours completely. So that's a work in process. The contractor's still removing old, installing new. Moving forward, obviously I recognize, and I've heard from the community, that sometimes areas that should have been considered higher density were not, and there's no place for people to park. I've also heard that there's some area, I'm just summarizing some of the major concerns, that around schools, the sign says, between 7 to 11, well, that's when kids are being dropped off, and vice versa in the afternoon, that's where they're going to be picked up. So what we're doing is on a case-by-case basis, we're going to go through and start addressing those individual issues. Obviously, before any citation is ever issued, we wanted to do a 30 to 40 day rollout period where whoever's following the sweeper at the time will just place a warning notice on the windshield advising, and then I'm sure we'll get a lot more phone calls, and we'll be able to identify additional concerns that should be addressed. Obviously, it's a big project, and a lot of signs and a lot of work has been put in, so I can't unring a bell at this point, but I definitely can move forward and address issues. And again, I think you'll see some areas, that it just makes sense with the community's concerns that staff address those issues, and I'll take responsibility for addressing those. That's kind of my wheelhouse. I've spent a career of 39 years doing enforcement and those type things, so this is nothing new to me. Additionally, what we're also going to do is, as we receive the complaints and concerns, one of the primary concerns is that both sides of the street are posted from 7 to 11. Where am I supposed to park within these 4 hours? So now that I sit in the bigger chair and I can actually have a little bit more say with the council, and my recommendation is going to be that, the intent of the program is to sweep the streets, right? So once the sweeper goes down the street and the enforcement officer behind the sweeper passes, then people would be able to repark. So through the warning process and educating the community of when, you'll know roughly what time each week that sweeper is going to come down. They're going to be following the same routes. I've got the routes. I know where they're going to start each day at each time. So probably within a half-hour window, you'll know that, hey, the sweeper's coming every day between 8 and 8:30 or 9:15 and 9:45. We're going to do the best that residents move their vehicle, let the sweeper pass, and then immediately repark. It's no different in the beach cities. If you go down to the beach area, there's areas where there's absolutely no parking, but when it's street sweeping day, you'll see one side of the street clear of vehicles, and the minute that sweeper's passing, you see people funneling in, parking right after that. Again, I think we've sent out hundreds of emails. I know I've spoken to a lot of people. I've sent a lot of responses. That it's a work in process. Staff recognizes that there'll need to be adjustments, that will need to be flexible, and we need to address the community concerns. A lot of the practices, best practices that'll be put in place are based on real life experience. I mean, in 1986, I was following a street sweeper as one of my first jobs. So I'm familiar with that, and in that city I worked, they had street sweeping on both sides of the street at the same time, but that had been in place for about 20 years. So the community kind of became conditioned that they knew day and time when the sweeper was going to pass, and most people did move their vehicle. There'll be peaks and valleys. Initially, when the program rolls out, we'll say if we issue 100 warning notices the first week, the second week it'll be 70, down to 50, and then eventually, if you get down to writing a citation, maybe we're at the 10 cars. Once those people receive a citation, it's going to ring that bell, and they're going to be saying, okay, I'm not going to get that ticket again, I'm going to move it, and now we'll be down to just a couple of vehicles. But again, progressively, we'll get there, and I just want the community to know, and look, I understand everybody's concerns, and that I will be the one held responsible to make sure that the community's concerns are addressed, and I just want you to know you have been heard. And that's why I wanted to circle back with this answer, because I don't want you to think that, hey, it's a hot topic, I'm going to blow you off. I mean, I don't run from people, I don't back down. I'm more than happy to speak and talk to anybody about any issue. And whatever the community's concerns are, they're my concerns, regardless of what city I work. I've worked in 5 different cities, 3 different counties. And community concerns differ greatly from community to community. I've been here for 6 years. I served in a role where all I received was basically complaints, right? I was complaint driven. I understood what the community concerns were. We worked proactively to clean up areas and take initiatives so we wouldn't receive the same complaint twice. But it's a challenge. The city it's a big city, and not necessarily with all the staff that would be optimal, but everybody is putting in 100% and doing their best. And definitely we're holding people accountable to do the best we can. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is that we were responsive to the community. We get back to people, a yes, no, we're working on it. No promises. All I can tell you is that we're gonna be 100%. I'm gonna give 100% every day that I'm here. Tomorrow's not promised. So each day it's 100%, and we'll go from there.
Well, thank you, but it seems like a lot of expenditure for no benefit from my point of view. We're not a beach city for West Covina.
Understood, and there were ideas and things from the state and through our NPDS. Yeah.
I figured the whole boondoggle was triggered by Sacramento.
Well,
We've got 5 councilmen
well,
that
you know,
just followed Sacramento like lambs, little lambs.
but I think trash, debris, getting into the storm drains, flowing to the ocean hasn't become more of a concern in communities. We're one of the few communities that actually did not have a more robust, proactive street sweeping program. So this issue, maybe 20 years ago, everybody was instituting something, and now it's come up here. And again, what's been done has been done. Again, to the community, my job is to address concerns and move forward and do the best we can with what we have.
Yes, you're right over here.
Oh, I was just going to ask about who do we talk to when it comes to the issue? Who can we email if we have concerns on our street?
I'm gonna take a chance here, watch. I'm gonna give you my direct email, and I'll make sure that staff gets that email. So that way you know, and I'll respond to everybody that sends me an email acknowledging, and I'll send it to the project manager, the directors working on a specific project. Some of the concerns may involve engineering, some may involve the contractor, some may involve the company itself. So on the website, under the Public Safety Department, you'll find my email address. You'll also find it under the city manager. And if you have a pen, it's going to be MMRAKICH. So first initial, last name at westcovina.org. mmarakich at westcovina.org. So if anybody sends me an email, I'm used to receiving tons and tons of stuff, but I will respond to everybody that sends me something, and I'll make sure it gets to the right person, and then they'll follow up and address your concern, at least get back to you what we can and cannot do.
To connect with the street sweeping issue, right now, in the cul-de-sac that I live in, the street sweeper, even though there are probably 10 cars in an 86 homes cul-de-sac that are parked on the street, they drive down the center of the street, around the cul-de-sac, and leave with no one, most of the time. No one. Are they going to change that now that this is in place? And the thing is, too, we have been told numerous times that nobody could park during the hours on the signs. So we're going to change the signs, and if we're going to change the signs, how much is it going to cost the city to change all the signs after they've already been put up? And third thing is that people are getting tickets written for parking when the city council said, tickets would not be written until after all the signs were up and everything was in order to go forward. And they're writing tickets on cars that are parked on the street with the signs that aren't even supposed to be valid right now.
One of the keys to a successful program, organization, city, is accountability and following up and reviewing best practices. So I understand, and I've heard from the community that at times the sweeper wasn't doing a very good job, maybe just going down the middle of the street, not getting to curb line. What you'll find is, I met with the street sweeping company just last week, and I spoke to them again today. that's being addressed, and the accountability will really come into play when we have an enforcement officer behind the sweeper daily. And so every street, every mile, every curb they sweep, we'll have somebody behind, so they'll be able to see that, yes, they're doing their job, no, they're not doing their job, and we'll address that.
Question about this newspaper though. Why, okay, because we had a holiday this week, my trash is normally Thursday. So Friday, we got our trash picked up, but before we can get the trash cans off the street, here came the street sweeper. Why aren't they on the same delayed holiday schedule like Memphis?
So under state law, the city can only enforce posted restrictions as they're written. Where in the past, some cities have had a policy that things maybe follow additional day stuff. If the sign says no parking on Wednesday, that's the only thing that the public safety police officers can enforce. So right now, the sweeper, again, this is kind of the trial and error period and the adjustment period. They're gonna go by what the signs are physically posted as. We can't move enforcement a day back or forwards. We can only enforce and follow on the days that it's physically posted. Now, the issue about some people receiving citations, I can tell you that nobody on City Hall staff has issued any parking citations for street sweeping. That being said, we have sworn law enforcement officers, we have community service officers and others that also have the ability to write parking citations. So there was a breakdown in communication with one of the shifts and some of the officers that maybe were not on in the field. They maybe like a detective bureau or something else. They've got back out in the field. So proactively, they saw, hey, the streakers going around all these cars parked in a no parking zone. So they did issue some citations for that. But when that was brought to our attention, I contacted the traffic sergeant at West Covina PD, re-put out the bulletin, and then they contacted us about those citations. Those were dismissed, and we also pulled back proactively anything that was issued, so they were not entered into the system.
I wanted to pick up on something that was said earlier, unfunded liability. Most people have no idea what that is. If the word pension was added when it's on documents, it would communicate a lot more effectively. At least they'd know it was about pensions. But the main thing I wanted to say is the whole reason the state has put this city on one of the most fiscally irresponsible cities in the entire state is because of pension liability. We have a very disproportionate pension liability, much higher than other cities. Why do we have that? Because when the city was flush for money 15, 20 years ago, they hired a lot of police and they hired a lot of firemen. And then subsequent to them hiring all these people, the state changed the rules on how pensions worked and gave the police and fire a huge increase in their pensions. Basically, the result of all of that was that we can't afford to pay back the pensions. The city just doesn't really have the resources to do it. And so we're always in fiscal trouble because of that. And the city council, I heard just a comment at the last meeting, we sold all these bonds and that should have solved the problem. There's a lack of understanding of how serious this problem is. Every year the unfunded liability goes up $2 or $3 million. That's cash. Every year, you start the year with a $3 million deficit because of this. And I think it's something that people really have to address because it's, you know, you go back over council meetings, I don't think this is ever talked about. It was talked about in the audit committee, especially when we were selling the bonds. But pretty much otherwise, no, it's not talked about. And it's actually financially killing the city. That's it.
Yes, I mean, I agree, that's what I'm conveying, I'm trying to convey, that those are the rising costs that we can't control really. I mean, it's already in place, that's liability, and workers' comp and general liability, they're huge rising costs, and no fault to the departments in a sense, where, you know, it's not like they're controlling that budget, that it's increasing. It's increasing because of those and because of those huge salary costs. So you're correct in that it is huge and it's driving everything up. Okay, well, I'm glad that we're, thank you all for coming. This was a good turnout. It was actually more than last time. So thank you for your input, and it will be addressed and also communicated to council. Thank you.